Well, hey, and welcome to Thinking About Security and Compliance. Think CyberArk Identity Compliance. This exciting webinar is sponsored by CyberArk and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach with Actual Tech Media, and I am absolutely thrilled to be your moderator for this special one-of-a-kind webinar because today we are getting the inside scoop, the you heard it here first headline, the opening moments of this exciting new solution. And I can't wait for all of us to get the chance to explore CyberArk Identity Compliance together. So I'm going to zip through the usual housekeeping at absolute light speed so we can all get back here with our exciting expert presenters to pop the champagne, cut the red ribbon, and open the velvet curtains together. So let's do this. All right, first up, I want to bring your attention to the question section in your webinar console. So if you're looking at your webinar console, you see the handouts tab, and right next to it is the questions console. Now, the absolute best part of a webinar like this is the chance to ask questions directly of an expert like we'll have here with us today. And this is especially important when we have a brand new solution to explore. I mean, now is the time. Today is the day. So ask those questions. And if we are unable to get to your question in the live session, don't worry. The CyberArk team will be following up with you after the webinar. A quick reminder that the questions console is also a great place to say hi to your friends in the Actual Tech Media community. It's also the right place to reach out to our team if you are having any technical issues during the session. Knock on wood, of course. Now, I do want to remind you all that a browser refresh is going to get rid of any of the usual tech gremlins, so give that a try. But if they're being particularly persistent, let us know about those gremlins in that chat. We're here to help. Okay, so I mentioned right at the top that there was the handouts tab and then the questions tab. So we started at the questions tab. Head on over to that handouts tab for me right now. Click into that, and you'll see some exciting content to go along with the webinar today, including a solution brief that is really succinct, really informative, definitely worth the read. So be sure to download that and save it for after the webinar today, because you're definitely going to want to read through that later. You're going to want to share it with your whole team, I promise you. Now, you may have also noticed that little prize icon there on your screen. I know some of your eyes went right to that. We do also have a $300 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of the webinar. So stay tuned for that. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for the prize, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you're saying to yourself, sounds great, but what are those, Jess? No problem. Head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom. You can find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. So if there's any questions, go check that out. Now, I mentioned this, but we really love getting all your technical questions. In fact, we love it so much that we've added an extra incentive for you. So at the end of the webinar today, we are going to review all the questions asked, and choose the very best question from the whole group and send them a $50 Amazon gift card as a thank you for being awesome. Now, obviously, you need to be here and present in order to ask a question, so there's that. But it does not matter if we read your question out loud or not. So even if we don't get to your question in the live discussion at the end, you are still entered to win just by asking a question. So get those fingers limbered up, stretch them out, get ready, light your brains up, and be sure to get those questions in. All right, well, that's it. I said I would keep it short and sweet, and I did. And now I am ready to start this awesome webinar. We're going to have two expert presenters here with us today from CyberArk. So Kazar Sultan, Senior Director, Access Solution Strategy, and Brandon McCaffrey, Lead Solution Strategist Architect. Now, Brandon's going to join us in just a moment for a demo, but I'm going to go ahead and bring Kazar on with me now. Hey, Kazar, thanks for joining us here today.
Hey, everyone. Good afternoon.
I am so excited to be here with you for this launch today. In fact, I came prepared, Kazar. I've got balloons, I've got streamers. We are ready for fun.
Yeah, it is the big launch day. I like it.
Now I don't know what to do with them.
I didn't bring any balloons, but I appreciate the thought.
You got to have a little fanfare. Before we get into the fun of the day, Kazar and I were talking, and we wanted to make sure that you guys are all awake and alert and having as much fun as I am out there. So even if you don't have your own balloons at home, we thought of a way that you could kind of play along with us this morning. Because Kazar's got a few questions that he's going to ask you. We're going to do some polls in a little bit here. And so we wanted to start by giving you sort of a test run, a test poll. So we have a question up on the screen here with for you all. And what we want to know is, what show are you going to be binge watching this weekend? So are you watching Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, She-Hulk? If you're watching The Sandman, or if there's another show that we've missed entirely, that is the best show ever that you want to suggest that we have not put on that list, please do let us know. Or if you're not a TV person at all and you have another thing you'll be doing, feel free to let us know that. But give us an idea, what are you binge watching? And I told Kazar this earlier. I have to admit, I am so excited for the new Lord of the Rings. I'm so excited about it. But it's like this really great piece of chocolate cake that, like, I know it's going to be so good, so I almost can't even start. So every time I turn on my TV, I'm like staring at the ads, but I haven't started it yet. I'm saving it. I'm savoring that moment.
It's She-Hulk for me. I'm about 3 episodes behind.
Nice. Okay. Good. We have, you know what? We're getting a good spread here, because we got some people who said, nope, I'll be right outside. And we got some people who said, I'm going to watch all of it. So it's a good blend. Some votes for House of Dragons here. Amazing. Okay. Well, fakes. Okay, good suggestion. Looks like you guys are awake. Looks like you're active. You're ready to get started. So I think with that, Kazar, I will step back and hand the mic on over to you, and let's get started with our day. Let's get this party going.
Yeah. Let's do it. So I again, like Jess, I'm actually very excited about kind of what we've got going on here with CyberArk Identity. Let me go ahead and kind of jump right into it. And so those of you who are familiar, and I think many of you are likely very familiar with CyberArk as a company, we've always been kind of best in class player for like privilege access management, or what we call PAM. And that's been our world for like the last 2 decades. CyberArk's been around for a very long time, and it's been selling kind of like into that space for basically that entire period. About 2 years ago, we added in a lot of new technologies into our portfolio for the purposes of like not only adding security for other types of users, but also thinking about the types of like problems and challenges that will exist in kind of the future kind of businesses and kind of everywhere else where people log into and need access to. And that's where CyberArk Identity comes into place. And then specifically what we're talking about is a new product inside of CyberArk Identity called Identity Compliance. And just to kind of get started here, this is me. I am the product strategy lead. And then I'm joined by Brandon, who's our solution architect here globally as well. And the agenda is really simple. We're just going to learn about the product. We're going to get to see a really cool demo from Brandon, and then we'll kind of jump into Q&A. So first, we'll talk about a little bit about kind of why we thought about this problem and how we went about solving it, and why compliance is important, the benefits, the values, the key use cases. We'll kind of talk through all of these points, and I would love to hear kind of from the comments and the questions kind of where you feel like this could be a fit, and we'll jump into all that stuff as time goes on. And at the very end, we've got plenty of resources. Like Jess said, today was the launch of CyberArk Identity Compliance. Launch meaning that it actually goes GA, general availability, to our customer base and to any new customers that want to get their hands on it. And that is, if you are a CyberArk customer, you can simply just reach out to someone on the sales side, and they'll certainly get you a demo, a more personalized demo as well. Okay, let's jump into kind of why a product like compliance needs to exist. And obviously, as you can imagine, compliance is closely related to things like governance solutions and so on. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today. But from some internal reporting and research that we've done, we found some pretty stark numbers as to the types of challenges that organizations are having. So 49% of organizations report that they do have users that have more access and permissions than necessary to do their jobs. So that means that maybe I received permissions to do something, maybe for a project, or I was accidentally given access, or I was given the wrong permissions from the very get-go, and I have more access than I should, and there are reasons why that's a problem. And then 44% of organizations said that they've seen an increase in insider threat. Now, insider threat can come from all different avenues and ways. Obviously, there are outside external threats and attackers. We all want to avoid things like breaches, but we certainly don't want to forget there could be kind of a bad actor within the organization as well, or there could be something that happens in that realm. We want to make sure that we don't end up falling victim to that. So knowing that these statistics are so high and so significant for kind of organizations globally, that's where we get to the point where we start thinking about kind of how do we get a hold of that, regulate compliance, and also put into place ways that we can monitor and verify the access of users. So now, like the statistics that you saw a moment ago, what makes those numbers so big, right? Why are organizations reporting that they have these challenges? Well, let's talk about a couple of these things that are happening for like your average organization that's out there. One is that there's all different types of users. Like I was saying earlier, CyberArk has always been a privilege access management solution, right? And remains to be kind of our main business and product, as you can imagine. Privilege access or privileged users are typically like your IT admins, your infrastructure. They may be logging into servers. They may be logging into privileged resources like AWS or cloud consoles and things of that nature. But beyond your privileged user, privilege and access to kind of sensitive information actually resides everywhere within the organization, right? You have employees, contractors, vendors, partners, customers, and you have people with like high privilege because of the position or title that they have. Like you've got your C-level staff, you've got your kind of leaders within an organization. They all also have a significant amount of privilege and a significant amount of access to these like sensitive either resources or documents or applications and so on. And they can make changes, and they can whatever access that they may have can be equally as destructive as someone who has access to your infrastructure in the grand scheme of things. So access management and also the compliance and governance of these users spans across every user within the organization. Next, there are all different types of services and applications that these users have. We just talked about this, but basically beyond servers and infrastructure, there's HR systems, financial solutions, financial applications. There are databases, there are banking websites, there are social media websites. There is like a variety of different areas where privilege and sensitive access exists. So all of those users multiplied by the fact that we are all, I guess, like happily working from home. I will say that I do miss an office setting, but here I am, working from home every day now. And we basically have less control over these individuals because of that in a lot of different ways. There was, different types of walls and barriers that we could create and kind of checks and balances that we could do also when people were kind of gathering more often. But beyond that, if there is a proliferation of access, there's also kind of because this isn't like a perfect science, people also end up with not the right access into the things that they need to do their job. They may typically what we find, and this has been a kind of something that CyberArk has been addressing for many, many years. In fact, probably the entire time our solution has been around, is addressing the fact that people have over permissions to do the types of jobs that they have. And then lastly, if it's not enough that we have all these internal challenges and changes but the world is evolving, right? And we just talked about working from home and kind of the remote work kind of mentality and shift that we've seen. There's also just like a significant amount of compliance changes globally that are happening. So it could be something like HIPAA or FedRAMP kind of here in the US. It could be GDPR in the Europe. It could be FISMA, CCPA, that's the California one. We've got SOX compliance. We've got all these different types of changes. These changes not only, and compliances that your business may have to abide by, are evolving significantly. And also what we find is that organizations are typically having to just kind of deal with this manually. And whereas manually sounds great and all, it leaves a lot of room for error. So let's talk about that a bit more. Jumping, before we talk about it, actually, a quick poll for the audience. Based on what I've just said, kind of the compliance changes, the users, the evolution of business, and everything in between, how are you certifying privileges? And specifically, I mentioned PAM here because I think there are a lot of CyberArk PAM customers in this audience. But how are you performing kind of or certifying privileges inside of your PAM or applications today? So I'm kind of looking at the results. I'm going to give another 10 seconds here to collect some answers. And what I had guessed to be the vast majority of the response here is becoming totally true. So let's pause here. You guys can continue submitting your results, but basically I'll tell you right now, I know you guys can't see the results, but it is 47%, so just about half of the individuals in this audience are saying that they have to manually perform this function. And this is just for PAM, right? You may also have to do it for applications, services, and other types of privileged access or sensitive information. And as we close out this this poll here, we just crossed into 51% of manual performing of this function. So let's talk about how identity compliance can automate and kind of make it a lot easier on many of you. So we just actually talked about kind of the fact that 51% of you are doing manual kind of performance of this function. It's not great because what it ends up leading to is security risks because you may not be doing it correctly or there could be errors along the way. Obviously, the person who's doing that manual effort probably doesn't enjoy doing it either. And also they could be working on more interesting projects. So therefore there is a loss of productivity. Individuals on your teams, IT departments and so on, compliance teams, skilled individuals are hard to come by, and you want to obviously not give them work that requires them to do things manually if you can avoid it. So you want to basically get to a point where if you give them better tooling, they'll have better productivity. And also as compliance initiatives and laws change, you want to be able to use a tool or some sort of automation to basically get you there a lot faster. And that's where we get to CyberArk Identity Compliance. So we basically built a product that not only our own customers have been asking about for a very long time, but the first iteration or the first version of that product, Identity Compliance, actually is kind of more so focused and centered around providing compliance and governance types of use cases, and I'm going to talk about what those use cases are, for your PAM deployments, right? You can use it for general access management as well, for like applications and roles and so on as well. But I will say that, again, for this audience and for kind of who we're promoting it to as a starting point, if you are a CyberArk PAM customer, you will find that this product will kind of be a pretty turnkey plug-and-play solution for getting you to your compliance goals. So let's dive into it. The key use cases for a compliance product are as follows. You can do discovery of access, which means that we'll talk about more how this happens. Once you've discovered the access, you want to certify that access amongst your user base. So basically, if a user has access to these applications and these safes on a quarterly or maybe a kind of a timeline, maybe like every year, you want to basically certify that access going forward, and that's completely customizable. And then lastly, as the access for a user changes or evolves, I can do an audit, I can do reporting, and I can also go ahead and look for behavior, risky behavior within my user base. And then if there is risky behavior, I can revoke certain permissions and access as well. So we'll talk about that too. Okay, so diving a bit more into those use cases, the access reviews is really simple. The way that it works is that I create an access campaign that will then go out and reach out to your CyberArk PAM deployment, or it'll actually even work inside of CyberArk Identity, like our SSO and MFA product, and look for permissions and roles that are amongst your users from our directory. And then from there, present them to you so that you can go ahead and go through a certification process. And the certification process essentially has three different actions. You can either acknowledge a user having certain permissions, you can revoke if you don't want them to have that access any longer, or you can acknowledge it. You can approve it. And by doing one of those three actions based on how they received those permissions or access into those different types of environments and resources, you can get to a place where that certification campaign is complete and you've now basically automated that entire task that you're doing manually. And you'll get to see this in the demo. And then on the third use case here is where if you did need to remediate a situation, as an example, I do a discovery. I find that one of my finance directors or one of my IT directors has access to a system that they no longer need. Instead of having to go now manually change that permission, I can go ahead and click a button in the access review and revoke that access. So I can kind of go a lot faster in the remediation process, and I can actually take actions that are typically a lot harder to do manually because of having to go through a bunch of different systems to make those changes. Imagine being able to just do it from like a singular consolidated console. It's just going to be ultimately a lot easier. And then lastly, if I wanted to expand kind of my ability to see kind of everywhere that user has access and run audit trails, have increased visibility into where that user has access and how they've used it. Again, singular console to see it and be able to either revoke it or change it. Let's talk a little bit more about kind of how the access discovery works. So first of all, you can select kind of a set of users. So I can go ahead and say for these, for my entire IT department, right? Let's say we're doing kind of a access review on your PAM users. For an entire IT department, I can create a certification campaign, and it will go ahead and take a look and see what safes that user has access to, what groups, security groups, roles, permissions that they have access to, and then basically on an ongoing basis, and you could set kind of the timeline in which it's going to go ahead and check these permissions. It will go ahead and on an ongoing basis check to see what that user has access to, and then give you those actions that you can take. And the future of this type of product is very bright. As you can imagine, it's not just about discovering the access, but at least for like our PAM integration, right? For CyberArk's PAM product, we can go a bit deeper, right? So not only can I tell you that user A has access to, this safe, I can tell you what their permission is inside of that safe. So they could either view the credentials or they could edit, they could modify, and whatever the downstream permission would be, perhaps they no longer need to have a specific permission. I can revoke or I can acknowledge that, but if they don't need it anymore, I can simply remove it. And I think that's kind of the area where remediation can be sped up. You can complete the remediation probably twice as fast as the access review probably typically takes you right now. And that's going to make it a lot easier kind of as you're doing these things, maybe across hundreds of people, thousands of people, for your organization. Okay, now that I've talked you through it enough, I think it's always helpful to kind of see the demo and kind of see it in action, kind of see what the UI and kind of how it all works. And also when Brandon goes through the demo here, he'll also kind of walk you through kind of some of the ins and outs of how this works. So I'm going to jump over to the demo next, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of dive into some key values as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Brandon McCaffrey. I'm a solutions architect with CyberArk, and today we're going to be talking about CyberArk's Identity Compliance. Many of you know CyberArk for being one of the leading vendors in the privilege access management space, where we've helped our customers secure their keys to the kingdom and manage privilege access to resources. Well, now with Identity Compliance, we are scratching an itch that many of our customers have identified, which is that customers, their workforce employees, their IT admins, and their users tend to accumulate privilege while they're at the organization. And as any organization that cares deeply about cybersecurity, we know that unnecessary privileges can lead to threats and attacks. So we want to do everything we can to help our customers maintain least privilege at the organization. And so Identity Compliance is all about identifying privileges that are no longer needed and taking action on those privileges to provide least privilege to our customers. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in here. So one of the foundational features of Identity Compliance are identity certification campaigns, also known as access certification, largely in the marketplace. Now, if we go ahead and create a identity certification campaign, the first thing we'll do is go ahead and add a campaign. So we're signed in right now as an administrator that has access to create identity certification campaigns. And these certification campaigns will focus on users and resources. So users will target who we actually want to run this certification campaign on. Resources will target what systems are we interested in understanding what those users have access to. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and create a identity certification campaign for the West Coast, our business division in the West Coast. And we're going to go ahead and give a start date to this. It's mandatory. Perfect. And then we'll go ahead and give a certifier for this identity certification campaign. In many cases, that certifier will be a user's manager. So the manager would certify, yes, my employees and direct reports should have access to these systems. In our case, we're going to go ahead and actually specify a user who runs the West Coast Business Division. His name is Paul. So we're going to go ahead and have Paul run the certification campaigns. And this person will be acknowledging, approving, or revoking privilege that these users still have access to. So we're going to give Paul 10 days to complete this campaign. We do want to remind Paul that this campaign is ongoing, so we'll go ahead and send 10 email reminders, one a day, to Paul. And we will require a comment when certifying and revoking access, so we're not just rubber stamping this certification. And lastly, we'll go ahead and have actions immediately take place when revocation happens. Now for the users, we are going to include a specific subset of users, and this will be all of the users that report to Paul. So that's going to be the West Coast Division, that business unit. So we'll go ahead and create a rule that says, hey, you're going to certify the users that report to you. And now we'll head to our resources. So we'll specify which resources we want to run certification campaigns on. We'll notice all of our applications that are within CyberArk Identity that we've been giving access to, systems like Box, Concur, Office 365, etc. In this case, since we're targeting a specific group of users, we'll actually want to certify all the applications that they have access to, because we want Paul to get an understanding of all the applications that his users are leveraging today and have privilege to leverage today, as well as safes. So we could specify in CyberArk this concept of safes, and these are basically containers with your most privileged data. Which safes do we want to run these certification campaigns on? In this case, we're going to say all safes because we want to get an understanding of what safes these users have access to. So this all looks good. We're going to go ahead and save it as a campaign. Okay, great. So just like that, we've created our identity certification campaign. Now let's go ahead and sign in as Paul, and I'm going to do that in another window. So let me pull that up. Perfect. So here we're signed in as our Paul user. So just like that, Paul is going to have access to his own set of systems, potentially his own applications, etc. But here with identity certification is what we're interested in. So in Paul's case, he'll notice there is an identity certification campaign in progress right now. So if we go ahead and select that campaign, we'll see the different users that are in scope for this campaign. So in Paul's case, John and Mike are his direct reports, and we can see the systems that John and Mike have access to. And as the certifier, we can go ahead and either certify or revoke access to these systems. So if we take a look at some of these systems like Workday or Concur, we can go ahead and start certifying or revoking access. In the case of Box, let's actually go ahead and click on one of these applications. Oh, and we'll notice there's a history report here as well. So in the history report, we can see things like when that application was assigned to the user, who made that decision. So we had an admin manually grant access, a user named admin actually manually grant access to Box for John, so that's interesting. And we can see in a previous certification campaign, John's access was actually revoked. So we might, out of caution, just say we're revoking access to Box since it was recently revoked by another admin. Great. So now we'll go ahead and revoke John's access, and we'll close that out now. So we've now revoked John's access to Box. So if we were to look inside our identity provider, CyberArk Identity, we'll notice that John no longer has access to Box, is no longer assigned to that application, and we can actually automatically go ahead and deprovision John from Box. So John no longer has a license in Box and no longer has an active standing in that application. Additionally, we'll notice that both John and Mike have privilege access to safes. So for anyone, again, unfamiliar with CyberArk's PAM, safes are a way of providing access to your most privileged accounts. And we can actually see those two accounts here when we go ahead and expand this view. We can see that we have Unix SSH keys and Windows domain admin access here. So these are some pretty serious accounts at the organization that John has access to. And indeed, we can also see all of the permissions that John has to this safe. So it very well makes sense as a certifier here that John has access to this safe, so he can retrieve accounts and list accounts. That makes a lot of sense if John is properly assigned to this safe, which in this case we're going to say he is as his manager. But there are a few things that don't really make sense here, like the fact that John is able to add accounts to this safe, or actually rename accounts, or even delete accounts. Those are permissions that are not necessary for John, since John, he's not our safe owner. He really should only be accessing the safes. He doesn't really need these individual privileges. And let's actually go ahead and jump over to our CyberArk PAM Vault and take a look at these permissions. Now I'm interested to double check what I'm seeing in PAM to what I'm seeing in identity compliance. So if we take a look at John's permissions here, if we look at his account management, that is absolutely right. John does have quite a lot of permissions here for account management. So let's actually go ahead and revoke some of these. Specifically, let's say that John doesn't need to be deleting accounts ever in this. So let's go ahead and revoke this permission. Okay, great. So just like that, we're going to go ahead and save this now as a decision. Okay, perfect. So our decision has been saved to revoke this access for John, so that John no longer has the ability to delete accounts. So now if we go back into our PAM instance, we can go ahead and get the latest refresh here. We'll take a look at that safe, the Linux target safe. And we'll look at John's permissions here. And under account management, we didn't do a full revocation of rights, but we did revoke that ability to delete accounts, and just like that, we'll notice that that privilege is no longer available to John in safes. So we could do this for a lot more permissions. Really, any permission that John has on the safe we could revoke or certify if John should continue to have that access as a certifier. So that's great. We've made some progress here. We're not going to finish the campaign for the purposes of this demonstration, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of some of the capabilities that you would see as a certifier in terms of seeing things like which applications users are assigned to, which safes they're assigned to, and also a history of things like when that user was assigned access, when they've used that access, previous revocations or certifications around this application, etc. So now we'll go ahead and finish this up back as the admin to actually create identity certification. So in that segregation of duties, Paul's not able to create identity certification campaigns. He can only he's only affected to leverage campaigns when they're created for him. But as an admin of the platform, we can go ahead and actually check on the progress of this campaign. So if we go ahead and take a look at the campaign that we've demonstrated here, so we can actually take a look at our progress, and we can see that Paul is starting to make progress on this campaign, which is great. But if we needed to send him a little nudge, a little manual reminder, we have those automated reminders set up to nudge Paul, but we could easily, right from the platform, go ahead and send him a reminder as well. And then all of this does feed into CyberArk's reporting as well. So from an administrative perspective, you can actually leverage our built-in reports to start to get a lot of audit around all of these identity certification campaigns. So this gives you one kind of central view to see, to create, see, and discover user access to all your different systems at the organization, and prompt managers, business owners, application owners to run campaigns and finish campaigns so that users are leveraging least privilege at the organization. So we're protecting ourselves against orphaned account attacks or attacks against accounts that should no longer have the level of privilege that they currently have. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope this demonstration was helpful, and look forward to hearing your feedback, questions, and thoughts.
All right. So as Brandon was going through that demo, I was reading through the questions, and first of all, there was a significant amount of questions being asked, which I'm really excited to see. And actually, it'll really help us understand exactly the types of things that we're going to be kind of getting questions from our customers as we kind of take this product forward. As you can imagine, today is the launch day, so you're seeing one of the first and only demos of CyberArk Identity Compliance. So these questions are actually really helpful as we think through kind of how to best help you guys. So let's jump into it. Let's jump into the questions. But before we do that, let me talk a little bit about the benefits. And I think that seeing the demo, where it's helpful is that it kind of shows you all the different ways that the complexity of handling this type of compliance task, where that complexity exists. You can see that when Brandon showed it to you, there needs to be an audit trail, there needs to be a reporting, and needs to be a log of the permissions that user has, when they received them, when they were revoked, and how they changed and how they like evolved over time, right? In that demo, you only saw like a little bit, right? Like there was only a few saves and there was only a few different permissions, but multiply that by the amount of like PAM admins and users that you have, and you can kind of starting to see like where that manual process tends to break down, or the elimination of kind of checking certain things because of how difficult it is. So we can basically, by putting these automated kind of products in place and kind of also attaching them directly to the things that you want to have the most amount of compliance on, increases your efficiency and helps mitigate risk overall. And when we go through the questions here, I'll be able to answer some things that have been coming up a couple of times over. But I do want to say that, and I didn't say this earlier, and that was a mistake, that CyberArk Compliance is actually directly linked to CyberArk's identity management solution as well. So when you go and deprovision somebody or change their permissions, there is kind of a joiner, mover, lever kind of function that happens at that point as well. So when we deprovision somebody, there's a whole slew of downstream actions that can happen from that as well. So we'll talk about that as one of those questions comes up here. And the deployment of CyberArk Identity Compliance should be fairly fast. It's just it's a product that's made by CyberArk. So therefore the integration itself is actually quite simple. It's just some API connections. And it does work for both privileged cloud, and self-hosted PAM as well. And then lastly, just the overall benefits is like you can't avoid having to abide by these compliance like standards and requirements. The best thing you can do is have something in place that will help you get there faster. And even if it doesn't resolve the entire needs that you have on the compliance front, if you can kind of knock away a big chunk of the types of questions you'll get from auditors or from like your compliance like survey checks, then basically you can kind of get to your end state a lot faster. So I do have a quick poll here to kind of close things out. And I would love to hear from you guys. What use case or part of the demo that Brandon covered seemed like it had like the most amount of value or some immediate value based on what you saw today? I'll give you guys a couple of seconds here to kind of put your answers in, and we'll take a quick look. All right, we've got a tie right now between two of these. And okay, I can see kind of where, actually it's a clear tie, and I'll kind of give 5 more seconds here and I'll tell you where everyone lands. And so in first place, we've got 33%, we've got access reporting and auditing. And then after that, we've got access discovery. Both of these are approximately 30 to 35% of the challenges. Actually, individually are 30 to 35% of the challenges. And then right after that, access review. So, and the world of like compliance and governance goes way beyond these, by the way. There's segregation of duties, there's toxic access, there's like checking to make sure that there's no like access that like impedes over another one. Like the world of governance actually goes way beyond these, but these are what we found to be kind of the 4 main use cases amongst our customer base that were coming up the most. So we tackled them first. The future of identity compliance is going to go way farther than this as well. All right, let's jump over to Q&A.
And magically I appear. It's like a genie. When you say Q&A, I'm right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Man, that was, sorry, now you guys are watching me move my my desk. Watch this. I have like a cool little, it's like having my own personal dolly. Isn't that neat? Behind the scenes with moderator Jess. Anyways, I have to agree. I've been watching all the questions coming in, and folks, you guys are alive, awake, and alert today. Just some fantastic questions. And we're just going to jump in because honestly, there's so many. And I have to say, just from the get-go here, we're definitely not going to be able to get to all of these. So I do want to remind you all that keep those questions coming in because we're going to make sure that all of them go to Kazar, to Brendan, to the CyberArk team so that you will get answers from them. And obviously this is a big thing today. So they're primed and ready to get back to you. So you will get all the answers that you could desire. Make sure those questions are coming in. But let's jump in. So I'm just going to take them from the top because these are all great. So Eileen is wondering, how does CyberArk set itself apart? What is your unique? What makes you guys special?
Yeah. And so this question came up in like a variety of different ways as I was like scrolling through them. And the main question was like either how does it compare to a different solution that's in the governance space, or what's unique about it in kind of coming from CyberArk. And I'll give you 2 kind of quick answers. One is that we are very much, respect the fact that the governance, like vendors and the governance use cases go way beyond the things that were in that demo today. So first and foremost, if your organization has needs around doing governance across like a variety of resources, meaning like applications, in-depth, Active Directory, LDAP, databases, your PAM deployment, and so on, and the list goes on, right? It also could be AWS, GCP, and things like that. Then you should certainly go with one of the kind of leading governance solutions. Having said that, not everybody has needs to do compliance, these types of like use cases on every single thing. A good place to start implementing these types of like use cases would be your PAM deployment, because of the nature of what we're protecting inside of PAM is highly privileged. So therefore, our solution today, right, at GA today, is best suited for CyberArk's customer base, CyberArk PAM customers that have, maybe either complicated deployments, have either several IT admins and users of that solution, and also organizations that don't feel like going through the lengthy deployment of a governance solution, then compliance can be set up a lot faster. The unique difference that we have is that since this is a solution made by CyberArk, it works with CyberArk PAM in a very deep manner. So you'll be able to kind of do that use case first and foremost fully.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think actually that ties in really well, because as we're talking about the different ways and different compliance things that people are taking into account and what they're considering, Ned here is wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about NIST and ISO and how that maybe is coming into play with these compliance structure.
Yeah. So parts of CyberArk Identity, right? CyberArk Identity kind of being the overall top product family. In that product, we've actually in the last year added a significant amount of ways to check and do reporting on how your organization is, what its compliance is to things like the NIST standards. And there are actually a lot of them, right? So we can check your compliance against NIST standards for authentication mechanisms, how your policies when they are in relation to multi-factor authentication. So as an example, if you have kind of very simple or not very strict MFA policies in place, you'll see that in the platform. It'll say that you have NIST AAL either 1, 2, or 3 compliance within your kind of policy structure. And so there's already a lot of technology and kind of checks and balances in place for that type of thing inside of CyberArk Identity. In compliance, we are adding in the ability to have templates in place, so that if you're going to abide by a certain compliance requirement or a certain compliance standard, then you can follow this template. And then from there, we can help you achieve it, probably by implementing certain policies or certain types of access certifications over time. But that type of help is built into the platform as well.
Yeah, that's hugely helpful, because it can feel like a lot. We have a question here from Rob, and Rob actually asked a few questions, but I'm going to combine 2 of them. One is, he's wondering why isn't using a single sign-on enough to guarantee security and compliance? And then will I have to completely replace my current SSO solution in order to use CyberArk Identity Compliance?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, I'll start with the second one, which is CyberArk Identity Compliance can be used completely standalone. So you do not need to start using CyberArk Identity's SSO and MFA. You can simply just adopt and use Identity Compliance again for your CyberArk PAM deployment. If you opted to use CyberArk Identity's SSO, then you would get that additional capability that Brandon showed you, that we could check to see, we can certify access and access reviews for applications as well. But if you, let's say, have Okta, Microsoft Azure, Ping Identity in place, then we can work alongside those and simply just cover the compliance for your PAM deployment. And the other question was, why isn't SSO itself just enough? SSO is kind of just to summarize, SSO is simply just providing the access. The single sign-on function doesn't actually care what your access is when it authenticates you in. So therefore, I could have SSO into something like Salesforce or NetSuite or other kind of sensitive applications and services. I'll simply get authenticated into them. But the SSO service itself doesn't actually care what you're capable of doing. You could be an admin, you could just be a salesperson, you also could just be someone who has very minimal access. So therefore, you need to pair the SSO solution with something that's doing the access review to make sure that you stay within compliance.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to sneak one. Well, I was going to ask another one, and I realized it's from Rob. Rob, you get a gold star today. You have so many great questions coming in. So Rob is wondering, how do organizations evaluate whether their current ID access management tools are fully compliant with their respective compliance requirements? So is CyberArk, and we were just talking about NIST and ISO. So what is the support that CyberArk can offer to or tools to expose those existing holes in security, that initial kind of analysis of where they're at?
Yeah. So actually, it's a good segue from like the previous answer that I gave about how the product does have a variety of kind of like abilities to check how you are in compliant of certain like standards or requirements or like based on a template. So like the example that I gave earlier was that we can check based on your current MFA policies how compliant you are to like NIST standards and things like that. So we can expose that as kind of a security threat, because if you don't have good authentication policies in place, or in relation you don't have kind of access reviews in place, then you're certainly going to have opportunity for over permissions or areas where maybe a user could have access to something that they're not supposed to. So that's one area. The other thing is that there's a product inside of CyberArk Identity called the user behavior analytics. And what that does, it will actually check to see if there are like passwords that have been found in the dark web, or if there are passwords or credentials that have a low level of complexity and things like that. So this, again, more examples of kind of how we can surface either threats or areas where you may be weak in like your security posture. And it could be related to kind of things like permissions and roles, or it could be things that are related to the actual user themselves that you can then go and kind of either try to increase the hygiene or improve the behavior.
Okay. So we talked a lot about kind of how it works, but of course, we've got a lot of people out there with a variety of ways that their IT environment is structured. So Deepak here is wondering about whether or not it's going to work well if you're looking at private cloud, public cloud, hybrid, on-prem. Can you use it as SaaS? All the hard questions.
Yeah. So the question is real simple, like basically, or the answer is really simple. Essentially, CyberArk Identity Compliance can be used with your cloud applications or any sort of like on-prem applications as well. We can check to see that we can do the same access review on, it doesn't matter where the app is located. It's basically just going to do an access review on the apps that it's connected to. So the destination or where the app is located doesn't matter, and neither does the PAM deployment. We could either do it with something like pCloud, which is our SaaS privilege offering, or you could do it with our on-premises self-hosted PAM offering as well. CyberArk Identity Compliance itself is a SaaS solution only. So you would consume it like any other SaaS product, but then you can connect it to anything that you need to downstream.
Okay, and that might be an important segue too here, because Jeremy's wondering, and he wants to clarify, he says, when we talk about access discovery, certification, review, and remediation, are we just talking about CyberArk access, not access to things outside of CyberArk? And maybe that's where those connection points are coming into play. Can you expand on that as well?
Yeah. No, we have definitely we've been talking significantly about CyberArk access in this, in this presentation, the demo, and so on, because at launch, right, today, that is kind of the area where it is most built out. So, but it does do the access reviews and the certification for applications, which could be not CyberArk related, or it could be just your general set of like SaaS and workforce applications. But where it does have its significant base of capability is around kind of CyberArk PAM compliance checks. So that's today, but in the future, it'll kind of expand further. But we've been talking heavily about the CyberArk use cases today.
Perfect. Okay. A great question from Andrea. Really simple. If she wants to get started, how is this licensed?
Yeah, it's really simple licensing. Basically, since it's a SaaS product, you just consume it like any other SaaS product. You don't need to stand up any infrastructure. It doesn't require any hardware, as you can imagine. And it's sold on a per user per month model. So like as an example, if you are looking to put compliance in front of your PAM deployment, just take the amount of PAM users you have, and then you would buy an equivalent amount of identity compliance licenses. So just kind of a 1-to-1 ratio, and then you can go ahead and use it pretty easily from there.
We are running pretty short on time here, and we are nowhere near through all of these questions. We didn't even get through our starred questions. I mean, it's just incredible to see these all coming in. But before we start to kind of bring it home and head out here, I have two questions for you. One is, for all the folks out there today that are thinking about this, if there was sort of one key point that you want them to walk away thinking about or asking themselves or motivated to do, what is that one thing?
Yeah. I'll make it a very like kind of practical question, right? I would I would look at your PAM deployment. Again, we're talking a lot about CyberArk PAM, right? But I would look at your PAM deployment and I would ask myself, or maybe the PAM admin, when was the last time that we did any sort of review of the access that our users have into these like privileged resources? And I think a very common answer will be that you likely do all of this type of access control and permissioning via like your Active Directory. In fact, there was a question about this as well. It's like we basically, our organization, like many others, do it via Active Directory and do it via security groups. And that is kind of a clean way to kind of, put the permissions in place and then know that that's what the users get access to. So, but I would look to see when was the last time you did like a kind of reconciliation of that. I would look to see if there's any lingering access. And I would look to see if there was any situations where there's over permissioning within kind of roles and things that you've set up inside of your ecosystem today. Because what you'll find, and this is the question, right? What you'll find is that there is a significant amount of threat just in basically kind of the status quo. And then I would look to the question is, what would that impact, kind of negative impact, be on your organization if there was some sort of attacker, either from the outside or some sort of insider threat? That question that you ask within the organization, and then we're basically providing a solution that would help you kind of get all of that into a more positive state.
Well, that's some good takeaways, and I think it is really important. We talk so much about the external threats that, and this is really looking at the internal as well, which clearly is something that we need to spend some time with. So that's a great takeaway. And the second question that I had for you, Ned also wanted to know, so we'll answer that for him as well. If somebody wants to get started, everyone out there is really pumped up. They want to learn more. They want to jump in. What do they do? What's their first step?
Yeah, I would say you're going to get reached out to by CyberArk's like team here, and then from there, I would encourage everyone to go and get like a more like in-depth demo from one of our solution engineers and so on. What you saw from Brandon was kind of something more standardized, that based on kind of the types of solutions or the types of problems that we've been seeing within our customer base. But we can take that demo in a lot of different directions. And we can also set up a proof of concept. So you can actually take like a trial tenant and connect it to your either like PAM sandbox or your PAM environment and take a look and see what basically comes out of your access review. And from there, I think it could be pretty jarring as to how much permissions and roles and kind of things may just be lingering. And then you'll basically have kind of your entire your work cut out for you. Basically, you'll know exactly what your challenges may be. So that's how I would get started, is to get your hands on it and kind of see where you land.
Yeah, sometimes we need that little shock to our system to really galvanize that action step.
Yeah.
Well, and I do want to point out that if you didn't already find it, if you head on over to that handouts tab, first of all, there is the solution brief from CyberArk, but there's also the learn more about CyberArk Identity Compliance, and you can click there, and there's a link right away. Book a demo, watch a demo. So definitely go and explore and make sure that you open that window, save that for later, because we're about to wrap up, but don't go anywhere just yet. Before you head out, because I do want to say thank you again so much for that. I love that we got a one-of-a-kind demo. What a cool experience.
Yeah, thank you, Jess, very much.
Yeah, well, this has been a blast. I very rarely get to come to work with party supplies, so I've very much enjoyed it today. And I hope you all have too. I have to take these off now. There. I was going to do confetti, and then I thought I'll never get that out of the. So we stuck with balloons, and I hope that you guys are all headed off to have some champagne. Congratulations on the launch, and thank you so much for including us all in this today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Kazar.
All right, thank you, everyone. Good evening.
All right, well, before you all take off today, I do want to bring us back around again. Oh, I knew you were all waiting for it. Okay, so we have a prize giveaway. A quick reminder that you must be in attendance here at the live webinar to win. And today's winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Noah Marner from Indiana. Noah Marner of Indiana, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card, and we will be in touch with you about claiming your prize after the webinar. We will also follow up with all the folks who ask questions. We'll make sure to get in touch with that best question asked. It's going to be very hard to choose a best question from today's batch because you guys asked some absolutely fantastic questions. Again, a reminder that you will hear from the CyberArk team, so we will make sure that you get answers to those. With that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I really want to thank CyberArk for making this webinar possible and for including us in what is a really, honestly exciting day. Giant thank you again to Kazar and to Brandon for an absolutely fascinating demo, a one-of-a-kind demo. How often do you get to see that? And a presentation. I know I learned a ton. I know all of you did as well. And I appreciate all the energy and good vibes that you guys brought today. Lots of awesome Friday feels out there, which is a great way to end the week. So sending some high fives, special thank yous to all of you for attending, asking those great questions, telling us about your favorite shows, what you're watching this weekend, and generally just being an amazing crew today. Because this, right here, honestly, this is what it's all about, exploring these kinds of exciting innovations together. And today we got to be a part of something really new and really cool. And I love that. So I'm so happy that I was here with you all. I can't wait to see you all again soon. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.